I'm Dawn Duverger. I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew. He is doing a great thing with this YouTube show, and you should absolutely follow him, like him, subscribe, because you never know what good things you might learn or be able to get out of it.
Whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can sell them out to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities. Never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them. But labels do not dictate who you are, who you're going to be. So prove to them. Sell them out to something. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Keith Andrew, and welcome to the Keith Andrew Network. For people who are wondering why I look like a Smurf, I got a new color white. Because people are complaining, oh, you can't see your face. Well, now half my face, now I look like Two-Face. Half my face is normal and the other side's a Smurf. But it helps with the dark background. Today's a special episode. It's episode 15, season 12, episode 15. And if you're a fan of WWE, make sure to watch the USA Network, subscribe to Peacock, and watch the highlights of WWE NXT. Also, the first subject I want to talk to you about is tell our audience a little bit about yourself. And our first subject, it's brought to you by WrestleMania 15. So, with that being said, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Dawn Duverger. I wear many hats in the entertainment industry. I've been doing entertainment since the early 90s, since I got back to the States. I started with modeling, and then I went on to stage entertainment, acting. Now I do writing. I've just started a small film company, PMA Entertainment Media LLC. We're about to start production on several projects, including some podcasts and shows. So it's very nice to meet you. Hopefully you'll give me some pointers.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you do your podcast, I would love to be a guest if possible.
That would be great.
Just throwing it out there.
Exchange of services.
So the first question I want to ask you is let me ask you this one because I have different cards of questions. So this one, I saw that you were a writer. So
Yes.
the first one I want to ask you is what's difficult about writing for you?
Peace and quiet. I'm one of those people that it has to be totally silent when I'm writing. And the problem is how often do you find totally silent workspaces? I have 2 teenage children, animals, multiple jobs. So that's the challenging part. And remembering to stop, because once I get started, it's like, wait, it's what time? I gotta work. Oh no.
That's how I feel. I've been doing this for almost 11 years. That's how passionate I am about it. You know, I don't play video games anymore. I give me an example. I decided, I'm going to sit back and watch Monday Night Raw. I'm a wrestling fan. I was thinking my brain was going like a freaking hamster on a wheel, thinking I can be doing so many other things right now. And also the show, and they make a big deal because it's like, oh, it's the big show after WrestleMania and the crowds are going to be hyped. And I was sitting there thinking, that's boring. I don't want to actually this sucks. So I'm the type of person like if I'm not involved in it, if I'm not a part of something, then I'm kind of like I can be networking, I can be doing other things. So what about you? When you're just trying to relax and watch TV, do you feel like your brain's constantly processing and saying, I can be doing so many other things right now?
Oh God, yeah. I always feel guilty about sitting still. It's my daughter's always picking on me because we make a point of sitting down and watching an episode every night of a show. I pick one show, we go through it. Next time she picks a show, we go through it. It's kind of a bonding thing. But I make a point of sit down and do that. And she's always picking, you're thinking about a plot, aren't you? You're tearing apart the camera work, aren't you? It's difficult to focus sometimes on that when you got too many irons in the fire.
For me, I was like, well, and you probably agree. you have to post something every day on social media. So I was like, all right, let's do 10 minutes, and 10 minutes of this episode will be posted. Let's do some of my old work. And I was watching, I'm like, I can put special effects to it. I can make it look different. I don't like watching read old. Depends. Some old episodes are good, but going back and slapping some special effects to it, it's kind of like picking up a turd. It's you, it's done, it's over with. You can paint it another color, but it's really not gonna change anything much to it. So for me, it's kind of like once I do the episode, I promote it, it's done, it's dead, it's buried. You try to bring it back in after 5 years. So trying to make it special, it's really hard to do that. So the question I want to ask you, how do you feel about when you work on something and you're like, it's done, it's dead, it's buried, but then you're like, I need something to talk about. So you try to bring back, I don't know, like a poem or a story that you wrote. Do you feel like you're beating a drum?
Well, it depends on the story. Like, for example, I had a short story that I did and it got published for a pirate book. And once it ran its course, 7 years, I got contacted by the publisher and said, okay, you're free to do what you want with it now. And I looked back, I was like, okay, where could I publish it? Again, I'm going to look at it. I'm still reworking this. This happened 2 years ago. And that's because I went, well, it's set in the real world. Now I'm going to put in fantasy. Well, now, oh, that's right. I don't have a word limit anymore. I can turn this into a whole thing. And next thing you know, I'm doing research on different type of pirate tactics, how to change real place names into fake place names, and learned a lot. Still rewriting it. So, and in the meantime, I've got to block out my podcast is coming up. I just had to do script out my dialogue for an episode of After Hours that I'm guest hosting tomorrow. Uh, that's going to be on a network television, and it's too many things because you try to focus on one thing. Okay, I gotta get this done. Oh, I know exactly what the pirate can do. Wait a minute, what was I doing? So,
Well,
chasing mental rabbits.
pretty much. You don't want to go down a rabbit hole.
No.
But let me ask you, you mentioned your podcast. What can you tell us a little bit about it?
I'm starting three because the film company is going to have three different lines. We've got horror/horror comedy called Nightmare Rue. We've got Supernatural Research Institute is going to be doing paranormal investigation and stories. And Faces of Indywood, which I'm hoping you'll be on, is independent entertainment people, all aspects, how they got into it. It's a review and interview. So, like, if you were on it, I would review your show a little bit, show some clips, and then I would interview you concerning it. Same thing with movies, books, artwork. That's what that one's going to be. The paranormal stories, roundtables, discussions, instruction, that sort of thing. Nightmare Rue is going to be completely different, though. For every script that we have for a short or a feature film, what we're going to do is make a radio show version as well. And that's what's going to be on the podcast. It's going to be done like the old-timey 1940s radio shows. So people can decide, do I really want to watch that in a movie form? So it's going to kind of dovetail. And we're working closely with Silver Phoenix Comics, who is going to make comics of them. So a script submission goes through a lot of phases.
Well, I was just looking at my reflection. I like how it's like cut down the middle. I kind of like that. It's like I kind of look like Two-Face. Well, I kind
Yeah,
of like split personality. Speaking of
but when
horror.
you brought your finger up, it moved the glasses in an interesting way. It was like you were tipping them to me.
Well, like I said, for the interviews and all the others, I wear the filter glasses because I blink too much. Also, it's kind of like a mask. It gives me confidence. Also, it helps me find where the camera is too.
Oh, well, that's useful.
So the next one I want to ask you, next subject I want to talk to you about, it's COVID. How has COVID impacted your life? And well, just let me rephrase that. How has control disabilities? How has COVID impacted your life, and do you see life differently?
Uh, Initially the impact was I kind of as a student of history, that's what my master's is in. The first thing I thought of was the Black Plague, the yellow fever epidemics, and all that. So I kind of had an idea what to do, but at the same time, with modern technology and communications, everything was different. The shutdown for someone like me who likes kind of staying home, uh, not that I get to, I was like, wait, I can stay home and get things done on computer. Really? I can still get paid to stay home. I was very happy about that. But my kids were obviously not very happy about it. So it definitely changed dynamics, the way people treat each other because they got out of the normal patterns and behaviors. So an entire anthropological study could be done on that easily. Uh, Personally, its impact on me was showing me that I could get more done, not necessarily having to run around like a chicken with my head cut off. Forced me to relax a little bit, but it also forced me to watch more. My children, unfortunately, did have some issues with socializing, and they're still feeling those effects. My son primarily socializes online or at work. My daughter doesn't even bother with online, and now she gets social anxiety, which she did not do before that. So that was definitely a detrimental impact. My husband's still complaining that he has to go out in public. So he's not happy about it. He's like, could COVID come back? Of course, there was the health concerns and all that, but I think it had both positive and negative impacts on society as a whole.
No, I agree because there was a time where people, were complaining, oh, I wish I can stay home and don't do anything, and all I do is press a button. Well, it's kind of like being punched in the face. You got what you deserved.
Yeah.
And now my dad said I felt like being under house arrest. You couldn't you could leave and go to shop right, stop and shop or whatever, groceries. And that was it. Then you have to stay home. If you have a big family, you fight over the internet. But
Yeah.
I think the people who actually benefited from the lockdown is people like Facebook, Instagram, um,
Social media. Yeah.
and that's the next one, social media. How can people follow you on social media? But the question I want to ask you first, more importantly, is well, actually, now I have to trade questions. How has social media impacted your writing career?
Social media has impacted all the aspects of my entertainment career, writing and acting and all of it because suddenly I have a face or a voice, a connection. Most of my writing previous to social media was ghostwriting. You wouldn't see my name on anything. I had several writing names that I used, nom de plumes. Um, the only time you saw my birth name was on or rather, my married name was on an academic paper. uh Now because of social media, Dawn Duverger having pages, etc., then it's out there. You can see it. People talk to me, can ask me questions, can approach me like you did. If it wasn't for social media, you wouldn't have found me.
No, you're right. If this was, let's see, let's just say 20 years, yeah, 20 years ago, MySpace, but there was no Zoom.
Remembers MySpace.
I used to be obsessed with MySpace. But I mean, you could network, yes, but Skype was very new. There was no self recording. Zoom, I don't really know when exactly that came out, especially the recording feature. That's the big thing because if you do a podcast, no, you don't want to hear audio, even though that's why they call it a podcast. But in 2006, it's either you go in person or you really just, shit out of luck. But let me ask you, do you think we benefited from social media? Because in a way, yes, I say yes, we did because we have Facebook, Instagram, and not even just that. You're in like another state. I'm in New York. So if you look at someone I want to talk to from California, if I want to talk to someone from England or Canada, all
Yeah.
you do is press a button. Back a couple of years ago, and sometimes if you think about it, it's kind of like you couldn't do that 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So I wouldn't
You
have
could do
met you 30
conference
years
calling,
ago.
but not like that. You're right. And it's making things easier and harder at the same time because now you got a proliferation of people who also shouldn't be on it and
Yeah.
a proliferation of people who should have been on it even more. That's just it. It's the sorting hat is broken, is a good way to put it. But think about this one with COVID, for example, the cross between COVID and social media availability and things like Zoom and everything. I did 3 movies while COVID lockdown was happening, and 2 of them I did from my home because what the person did was he went out on Facebook, created a group, invited people, scripted it in a certain way, and then had everyone film their own bits, send it in, and then put them together. His name's Brad Thomason. So Wasszilla and Terrifying T-Rex, I was in my dining room the whole time. My son recorded me and sent it in. And that was possible because of networking on social media and because people were actually home and available because of the lockdown. So, in a way, the combination brought a lot of different things together.
No, I agree. You have to take, even if you have, a crappy hand, you have to make the best of it.
Yeah. And that's just one good example of how those two things affected each other.
Well, let me ask you this. As a writer, what are your values and what is the most rewarding part of being a writer?
The most rewarding part is having a completed work that's appreciated. When you finish it, there's a sense of, sorry about that. There is a sense of relief because the story's out of your head or the idea is out of your head and it's a complete thing and you have now communicated it. And when people read that and they give you input, even if it's bad input, they're giving you input, they read it, your words are in their head now. You've shared something. And I think that's one of the things that helps influence society. I mean, we have classics for a reason. If I say, hey, are you my Huck Finn? You know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't have to say, well, in the story Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, this, you know. And a good writer leaves a mark. So having something complete and knowing that it's being read, that's the best part.
Have you ever thought about being a ghostwriter?
That's where I started on writing was ghostwriting. And like I said, other than that, it was mostly articles.
Well, I do have some ideas I'd like to talk to you about off the air, but would you be interested in ghostwriting again? Like a
Oh
book?
yeah, I would absolutely do ghostwriting again. I still do it sometimes. Um, Generally it depends on what it is. Like if somebody turned around and said, I want you to write a bawdy romance, I'll be like, yeah, I got nothing. Um, Something horror or comedy or an academic paper about uh Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, no problem. Got that. Yeah, so it just depends on what it is. Most of the time when I ghostwrite scripts.
Well, hypothetically, would you want to help me? Yeah, I'd like to hire you be my ghostwriter.
As long as it's none of the things that offend me, which is by the way a very short list. You should be fine.
No, absolutely. Well, let me ask you the next question. How do you build a character? So if you were ghostwriting about me, how would you build a character? And the second part to that, it's the second, well, actually, let's stay with the first one. I don't want to throw too many things at you. So, force of habit. So, if you were going to build a character for your story and I was your subject, how would you build that character?
Well, if I'm basing it on you, the first thing I would do is learn as much as I could about you. And then I would start with the physical stats. What does this person look like? Are they strong? Are they weak? Are they fast? Are they slow? Things like that. Are they some gradation between? And then you go on to personality quirks because you can write characters, but they're going to be shallow if they don't have depth. So maybe, I would go into what are things that you treat as hobbies? What are things that interest you? What are things that you're afraid of? What are things that you hate with a passion? Uh when you're emotional, how do you respond? That sort of thing. So you to create the correct dialogue for the character, I would have to know their motivations, strengths, weaknesses, interests, all of that. So you build from the outside in because the inside's the bigger portion.
That's
The
true.
outside's just window dressing.
Well, what about this? Have you proceeded in your writing career as you wanted to?
No, I think it's going super slow. Mainly because I started as a ghostwriter. So even though I had publishing credits, you can't claim most of those. So now I'm having to rebuild or rather rebrand myself, even though I'm established, because it's just an unknown, most of it's an unknown factor.
That's
So
true.
no, I went backwards, basically.
Well, this is actually a funny subject you're gonna enjoy. When you write in something, do you listen to music? And if you do, well, this subject is kind of like song of the day. So when you're listening, actually, I haven't done my interview as of late. I'm freaking rusty as shit. Okay, so point out of the show, I do this to help me with my social skills. Anyway, sometimes it's so sometimes it doesn't. So when you're writing a project, is there a song that gets you fired up? Is there something that gets you passionate? It's like, this song, for me, I like Bruce Falco. I keep busting his name. It's Bruce Falconer. He does the audio for Dragon Ball. So Dragon Ball gets me excited. So when you're doing a project, is there any orchestrated music, mood music that you listen to?
Well, when I'm actually writing, I do silence. Unfortunately, that's kind of my thing. Or it has to be something with no words. But I have been inspired. Like, for example, the other day I was listening to a band named Poor Man's Poison. It's one of my favorites. And because of the way they go into things and the dark southern goth feel to it, it made my brain start working. And by the time I stopped the car, because that's what I was driving, I had an entire script idea and I had to run in the house and go, Darren's gonna be late. Type, 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 type. So it inspired me. The other day I was watching True Blood with my daughter because she loves horror, and she's on Vampire Thing right now. So we're watching the opening song, the Bad Things. It happened again as soon as I was like, "All right, good night, honey." Type, 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 because I came up with another idea. Uh, so yeah, I get inspired by random things, but if you're talking about just build up, it has to be no words.
What about
Unfortunately, I'm dyslexic, you see. So the problem is if I'm hearing words, if I'm trying to write words, they'll mix up.
no, I understand. Now,
So dyslexia is not fun on some things.
what about today? Did you hear a song that you enjoyed today, or did you play a song that you enjoy?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I was listening to Poor Man's Poison and Dead South. And again, I was going down the dark gothic rabbit hole, so to speak. Um, but it just made me start fleshing out an idea for a script for a blues ghost.
Well, also the blue on my face kind of like goes to blues. But next question, I do have a couple questions to talk to you about off the air, and I do apologize if I hesitate. The fun question I want to ask you, wrapping up, I have no cards up my sleeve. I want you to be brutally honest. When I first sent you the message, what made you say yes, and what was your response to it?
Well, when I first saw your message, the first thing I did was look you up. I checked into what you were doing, and one of the things I saw on there was that you were trying to get people to help people and yourself get past disabilities and labels. I hate labels with a passion. Unfortunately, it's one of the ways our brains sort information, so we're kind of stuck with it. But I know a lot of people who have disabilities who had to work past it. I've worked a lot of different jobs. I've not just been in entertainment. I mean, this morning I was delivering fundraising chocolate because that's my day job right now. So I interact with a lot of different people from all walks of life for various reasons. And having had to get over dyslexia, for one thing, it's not a learning disability, but I am an immigrant. So when I first got here, I did not speak English. And that was challenging because people did not want to adapt to it. So it was like being trapped in a chaotic world, trying to just get something simple done. And I imagine that's what it's like for a lot of other people. The producer of the show I'm going to be working on tomorrow, he has a child with issues that are very difficult. And he's having to go, it's not just the child going through it, it's the whole family having to help him and be there for him. And watching the lack of support that family's getting, trying to be supportive. So anything that helps people with disabilities have a better life, I'm absolutely for. So when I saw that on your list, I was like, okay, what's he need?
No, I agree. Yeah, it's always about making an example, and it's always just being there for people. It's not always going to be one-sided. It makes you a better person. But the next question I want to ask you is, how do you feel now, and what do you recommend it to other people?
I couldn't hear the first thing. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
how do you feel now, and what do you recommend it to other people?
I still feel like it's a good idea. I think your show's a good idea. I think you're leading by example, showing that if you put your mind to something, you can do it.
Absolutely.
So, and honestly, more people need to do that. So I'll talk about it. I'll tell people to watch it.
No,
And
absolutely.
like I said, I hope you'll be on my podcast, Faces of Indiewood, when it comes out.
More than welcome to do it. I have some ideas that I talked to you about off the air. I would love to be a guest, but our goal is to reach 500 and more views. And for people want to know why I'm wearing blue, I have these color light bulbs. Every day it's a different color. I'm a big wrestling fan. Obviously, if you see blue, blue means it's Friday. It's not. It's Tuesday. I may change up the colors, but Mondays are red. Fridays are blue. I know I like wrestling, but that's my
I
story.
can't say anything. I used to do wrestling.
Oh, were you women's champion?
I was not a champion, no. I
Well,
did the entertainment style wrestling.
oh,
Do you
what can you?
remember an old show called Glow?
Yes,
Okay, when they went on the road and they were traveling, they had local acts that would go on and wrestle before to warm everyone up. I did things like that.
it's
The
funny.
local act.
It's funny you mention that. I am in the works of having a champion from Grow Wrestling, so maybe we can do like a double interview or something.
Oh wow. Okay.
But I do have a couple questions for you off the air. Our goal is to reach 500 and more views. Top number 1,000, but if we can reach the 500 mark, that's all that matters. This will be shared on all social media. So like, share, comment, subscribe, and as always, you make a new friend, support people with disabilities, and you get to share your story. So until we meet again, I catch you later. Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
And
Thank
have a
you for
good
doing
night.
what you do.